VO2max testing. VO2max testing is really just graded exercise. Meaning we are gradually increasing the intensity of the activity in a consistent manner throughout the test. The ultimate purpose is to push someone to volitional exhaustion or their maximal level. There are literally hundreds of different combinations of intensity and increases which result in bringing someone to max, whether it be speed or grade. And we've already talked in class about how VO2max test can be performed with different modalities: treadmill, cycle ergometer, swimming, swim, or infinity pool. There are rowing ergometers, there are synthetic skating ergometers, there's all sorts of stuff. Most common is a treadmill or a cycle ergometer, and we'll be doing today's test on a treadmill. However, the speed or the grade is increased at whatever rate, that's up to the specific protocol and information or many different combinations. But in general, there are two different ways to categorize a VO2max test. First is a continuous versus a discontinuous protocol. Okay. Continuous protocol obviously means there is no rest throughout. In other words, the intensity of activity will gradually increase the entire time, and they will be exercising the entire time. There is absolutely no rest. Whereas a discontinuous protocol means that there will be periodic rest periods interspersed throughout the test in between the stages. And there's a specific reason for that, which we will talk about in a second. Second, we have instrumental versus a ramp protocol. Now, the importance of this has to do with when we alter the intensity of the activity. Imagine that we have different stages of the test. Okay? An incremental protocol simply means that for the entire stage, whether it be 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, however long the stage length is, the intensity of activity will stay the same. In other words, if the stages were 1 minute each, for minute 1, the intensity could be 3 miles an hour. And you keep it at 3 miles an hour for that entire minute. And then at the next stage, at the end of that minute, we would change the intensity 4 miles an hour, for example, and then 5 miles an hour, or 6 miles an hour. Okay? Whereas a ramp protocol, we are gradually changing the intensity just a little bit throughout the stage. And so the ramp protocol looks more like this. In other words, at the beginning of stage 1, the intensity would be 3 miles an hour, right? And by the end of stage 1, start of stage 2 would be 4 miles an hour. So maybe we change the speed 0.1 miles per hour every 10 seconds, every 8 seconds, right? And we change the percent grade 0.5% every 15 seconds, something like that. So we are changing the intensity just a little bit throughout, so that at the end of the stage, it is where it would be at the beginning of the incremental protocol, right? And so today we're going to run a VO2max protocol, and as you'll find out, this will be a discontinuous and incremental protocol.
All right, before you get going with your max test, can you tell us a little bit about what your current physical activity regimen is? Be as specific as possible.
So we usually do some kind of aerobic conditioning 3 times a week, whether that's long distance or kind of interval sprints. Just depends on what we're doing for RTC that week. And then I'll usually do some kind of slow cardio at the end of my lifts. And those are anywhere from 6 to 7 times a week for 20 minutes. And then I also resistance train 6 times a week.
Okay, and what do you do with resistance training?
I use kind of textbook bodybuilding split. So I'll do like legs one day, chest, arms, stuff like that.
Okay, and what's your past physical activity regimen look like? Did you do any sports in high school or recently or anything of that nature?
I did wrestling and football in high school, and then that's really the end of like my sports career, but I kind of kept those workouts going a little bit, kind of higher intensity stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We got about 30 seconds. You can stay seated. We'll do
No, it's an overlap sheet. So you're just going to get through the sheet.
all right, go ahead and stay up.
Let's see these 2 minutes. See the other one. I don't know. I'm not sure.
You're ready. Just thumbs up. Treadmill will start in 15 seconds. All right, here we go.
All right, our participant is running a discontinuous incremental protocol. Stages are 3 minutes in length, and there'll be 90 seconds rest in between each stage. This is actually the protocol that we perform on athletes here at Washington State University when they come in for VO2max testing. So it's a professional protocol. And each stage will be at a higher intensity. So we are incrementally increasing the intensity of activity. This first stage is at a very simple 6 miles per hour at a 0% grade. Typically, VO2max tests will start at much lower intensities than that, but since this is a protocol which is used more for performance-based athletes, we thought that we would start at a higher intensity. One of the reasons for a discontinuous protocol is to be able to collect more data on each intensity of activity, so at each stage. Obviously, we're getting lots of data in a continuous manner from our metabolic measurement system, which is down here. So you can see all of this data that we're getting for each stage, including VO2, minute ventilation, tidal volume, the percentage of carbon dioxide and oxygen which is breathed out, resting RER, respiratory exchange ratio, METs. We get a number of variables here. It gives us a lot of information, and as you can see, we've set it so that we're getting data every 20 seconds. So the reason for a discontinuous test then is to collect data on variables that we can't collect while he's running. So you'll see when he sits down for the rest, the team kind of swoops in like a NASCAR pit crew, and they'll collect a number of different variables. Specifically, we're going to get blood lactate here. You can see Kelly's sitting up to do blood lactate. Okay, so she's actually going to take a finger prick, which is nearly impossible to do while he's running. And we're also going to get blood pressure on this side. Right arm out, left arm out. So we're getting blood pressure here. And we're getting blood lactate over here. And in 90 seconds, less than 90 seconds, he's going to need to stand up. We're going to need to be completely done because that treadmill is going to begin whether they are done collecting data or not. Bryce is running the test here. He's making sure everybody's on point, doing their job. He's also watching the clock so that he can warn them when they need to stand up. So you can get a little bit of rest. Obviously that first stage is not too vigorous. Okay, so the stage is going to start in 15 seconds. They're going to stand up. The mask is still on. This next stage will be at a higher intensity than stage 1. So stage 2, which he'll be running for 3 minutes, is at 6 miles per hour at a 5% grade. Once again, we are getting continuous data every 20 seconds on any variables that are associated with the air that he's expiring. As you can see, the mask which he is breathing into is attached to a hose which feeds down into our metabolic measurement system. This is called indirect calorimetry. Indirect calorimetry. And basically it is collecting expired gases and analyzing those expired gases to determine oxygen consumption and energy expenditure. This is the end of stage 2. And the same procedure will apply regarding in between stages. You're getting blood pressure and blood lactate. Now we are beginning stage 3. This is at 7 miles per hour at a 6% grade. So advantages versus disadvantages of a discontinuous test. Obviously, for running a discontinuous test such as this, the advantage is that you can collect data on blood pressure, blood lactate, following each stage. Now you'll notice my team, as soon as he sits down, they'll get it right away, because that effect from the previous stage when they were running will still be there. If they waited too long, that evidence of that effect will be gone. Okay, so they're going to get blood pressure, blood lactate. You could even get other variables during the rest, and so that's the advantage of the discontinuous test. Additionally, some athletes enjoy a bit of rest in between each stage. Others report that that's not so much fun, not necessarily the rest, but then getting up to start the next stage at a higher intensity. Some athletes report that they would prefer just to keep going throughout. So obviously with a continuous test, it lends itself to a more gradual increase in intensity typically, And it also, you don't have to stop, right? You can keep going. Your muscles don't lock up. Typically, there's a less risk of a cramp, something to that nature. So these are all reasons for a continuous test as opposed to discontinuous. But an obvious disadvantage of the continuous test is the only data that you're going to be able to collect during the test would be anything that's related to indirect calorimetry, data which is breathed into the metabolic, that comes from the metabolic measurement system. You can collect blood pressure and blood lactate, but only pre and post. You cannot get it throughout. You can obviously see here that Benji's tiring just a little bit. One of those indicators is that you can see his RER is above 1. Okay, right now it's at 1.03. Typically that indicates some fatigue. There are also subjective indicators that the participant is fatiguing. Okay, we don't see too much of that yet, but the head starts to go down a little bit. They might go from side to side on the treadmill or go up and back a little bit more. Okay, obviously heavier breathing. They'll start to make noises because then they're tired. He's clearly going to finish this stage though. So that's the end of stage 3. Same procedure applies. This is blood lactate. So he's getting a blood draw here. These are an easy bleeder, so that's nice. He gets a nice bubble of blood there. Brings the meter down. Benji, you got another stage in you? Oh, he's good. All right. Stage 4 will be 3 minutes in length and will be at 8 miles per hour to 7% grade. Give it all you got, Benji. Come on now. Alright, so in this stage, watch for some of those indicators that we discussed regarding volitional exhaustion. See if you can see some evidence of fatigue. Most important, even more important than collecting accurate data, is the importance of safety. And you can see we have an individual, sometimes we have 2 individuals, right there, literally with their hands inches from their back at these higher stages. So that if they trip, or if they stumble, or anything, they can reach in and grab them at a moment's notice. And there have been instances where we've had a participant literally their legs stop moving and they fall face first, passed out, and we have to be able to catch them before they hit the treadmill belt, obviously. See if you can see some of those indicators here. Is his form the same as it was at the beginning of the test? Get on that out for a little bit. How was that? Okay. So at the end of the test, I think you could probably see some evidence of fatigue there, some of those indicators we talked about. He knew himself well enough to grab the railing as we instructed him in the beginning and indicate to us that he was done. And that's always a nice thing, as long as the person pushes themselves to their volitional max, volitional exhaustion, which he clearly was at. Like I said, we've had athletes before go until they'll pass out or until they fall, and they have total trust in us that we'll catch them, which we've had to do on occasion. So if you can you tell us, explain to us a little bit what that experience was like? I know you're a little winded, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, every time I run, it's a huge stretch in the legs. I kind of know that. I try to train to help, but I'm not doing enough now. So once the lead gets the legs started to go, then I can always feel my breathing start to pick up. And then, climb. And once we get to like, my brain's heading forward, and my body's like, hold on, I'm on back. So.
How were the first three stages of that test compared to that fourth stage?
Stage 1 and 2 is easy. Stage 3 started to get my legs a little bit. Then ended stage 4, got on, legs start good. About a minute in, start to see really set in, and then start coming on back. Start trying to push forward. So
Can you tell us what that last minute felt like? Yeah, not your favorite experience.
I wanted more air, but it didn't was coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you agree that the vast majority of the test isn't that bad at all, just like a normal workout? Yeah. Good. So overall, you enjoyed the experience?
Yeah, no, it's cool. I think I've enjoyed it more often.
That's the standard, guys. Ivan Drago. Here is our participant's data. You can see he is a 22-year-old male. His height is 166.5 centimeters, and he weighs 79.6 kilograms. And you can see we have both pre and post data, including heart rate, blood pressure, and blood lactate. And then you can see for each stage we have blood pressure, and we have blood lactate, and we even have a heart rate value. You can see the blood pressure systolic is going up throughout. Diastolic stays about the same. One of the reasons the systolic blood pressure goes up so fast in stage 1, you can see here, we're starting at a really high intensity. Okay, 6 miles per hour, although most people would consider that to be moderate intensity exercise, some consider that to be vigorous intensity exercise. Technically, it's probably classified as vigorous. So it starts out pretty high. Okay? You can see heart rate is gradually going up, although in stage 4, it should be noted that our EKG system was having trouble receiving the heart rate signal. One of the leads came loose, which is why it's down at 135. That's probably not an accurate recording. You can also see that blood lactate is going up at each stage, which you will need for some of the questions.